question you have to ask about prophecy is, where were you? Where did you stand?
We have faith, we have conviction, and I'm willing to die 1,000 deaths for Israel and the Jewish people and for freedom and goodness and life and what is delicate and what is precious. If it makes me an extremist, that I'm willing to die and sacrifice my life for what is good, then I'll own it.
If there's Christians that are opposing and resisting and not supporting Israel and this modern return to the Jewish state as of today, God help you.
Welcome to the Israel Guys, the Land of Israel Network, and today we have special guest Eliyahu Berkowitz, all the way from the Golan here in Israel. So great to have you with us. Rabbi Ari Abramovitz with us, Joshua Waller. I'm Luke Hilton. Guys, make sure to subscribe, follow along. So much happening in the news this week. First off, Iran said they're done talking to America, and now the speculation is, will Israel strike Iran, which has been the speculation for at least 10 years, I think more than that. Now rumors are that America is going to start negotiating again with Iran. So I don't know how much there's to talk about with there. Israel supposedly recalled their negotiating team from Qatar because the talks with Hamas have fallen apart for any kind of ceasefire. Operation Gideon's Chariots has commenced. I'm kind of questioning, like, what's different, what's new about this. We'll get into all that. Europe trying to band together to stop the war in Gaza. There's a joint statement from the French Prime Minister along with the UK and Canada. And tragically, like literally right before we started recording, there's not even a lot of details. A young couple set to be engaged in Jerusalem next week was just murdered by a Palestinian terrorist. I'm going to go ahead and say that.
I believe he was...
Yeah, I'm not sure he was Palestinian.
He was not Palestinian, but he screamed Free Palestine. Right. He was pro-Palestinian.
Right,
which shouldn't be confused with...
Is there a difference?
Which should not be confused with pro-Hamas or anti-Semitic.
Right, and there's also no such thing really as a Palestinian, but we're not going there right now.
But what I want to bring out is, you would think this maybe happened in Israel, right? Because that's nearly weekly news here. This happened in Washington, D.C., outside the Jewish Museum, and the two people who were killed were staffers at the Israeli embassy, and their names were Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lischinsky, both Israeli, both worked at the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., and as you mentioned, whoever the terrorist is, he yelled "Free Palestine," opened fire, and this young couple was tragically murdered. The young man had just bought a ring, and they were coming to Jerusalem next week to be engaged. So just tragic. And again, like, by the time you guys are watching this, there will probably be more details.
Would you mind putting the picture of them up on right now? I want people to look at their faces. You can tell by looking at someone's face, really a lot of times, what they're about. Look at Sinwar's face. You could see everything you need to know about. Look at his face. It's not always true, but this is true right now. And look at the kindness and the sweetness and the hope and the optimism and the love in their faces. You know, people like this, it's so clearly a war of light against darkness, good against evil. And this is just a period of time where the world is coming down, where they come down on this. And the whole world could come down on the other side. It doesn't change the fact that light is light and darkness is darkness.
So Israel's ambassador to the U.S., he said, quote, "The couple that was gunned down tonight in the name of Free Palestine is a couple that was about to be engaged. The young man purchased a ring this week with the intention of proposing." So my question, and I was talking to you, Eliyahu, about this before we started, is this feels next level in America. Like, we've all known anti-Semitism has been increasing in the last couple of years. Things are getting crazier. You hear about anti-Semitic attacks, graffiti, riots, protests, people getting punched all over America. Has anyone been killed? Like, this definitely feels like the next step. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Ari, weren't you stabbed in Texas for being a Jew?
No. I was stabbed in New York for being a Jew.
You lived in Texas. You were visiting New York. You were going to school or whatever you were doing.
I finished the Army. I went to finish my degree in New York. This is neither here nor there. Yes, I was walking down the street and I was stabbed. The police said he needed to stab a Jew to get into a gang. But there's also...
How long ago was that?
That was 20-something years ago. But anyway, I don't know why you say this feels next level. There have been attacks after attacks on Jews in America.
This is my question, because people were killed, though.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some people were killed.
Yes. there was an attack in a synagogue in New York where people were like, had their heads smashed in with axes. Do you not remember? There was like synagogue murders.
In recent times.
There were synagogue murders that happened. This is not, you don't hear about it because the people perpetrating it aren't wearing a red MAGA hat and the people receiving it aren't, black people. But it doesn't fit the narrative. So the news just either ignores it or glosses over it. But this is not, maybe it's being upped and it's increasing in momentum, but this is not something brand new.
I kind of feel like my purpose here is to be the old guy. I am the old guy. And when I was growing up, we studied the Holocaust intensely, all the Jews. And one of the things we were always afraid of, we'd say, the next Holocaust will be in America. There were just so many similarities between America and pre-war Germany. It's the academic center. German used to be the international language.
They're both republics.
They're both republics. People forget that Nazi is an acronym for the National Socialist Party. But we always said that. And I've been saying it my whole life. And as soon as October 7th kicked in, for some reason, I don't understand why, I asked a few of my Christian friends on a personal level, I said, would you hide me? And it didn't make any sense for me to ask that. But it was so tangible that we were going back into that darkness, a darkness that I've never experienced in my lifetime before. I think after the Holocaust, the world had stared into the abyss and seen the ugliest depths of the human soul, and they stepped back and they said, we don't want to go there. And so they stepped back from the hatred of from Jew hatred, and we had a break. But the status quo for the human race is to hate Jews with a hatred that goes beyond anything else. They're willing to hurt themselves. They're willing to destroy everything about their society and culture just to hate the Jew. And I think that's what we've slipped back into. And rather than get better, it's getting worse because they realize that they can't do another Holocaust because we've got Israel, because we've got
I'm not sure that's the truth. October 7th was the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust in the land of Israel. But I think a lot of Jews have that question deep. You're at least honest enough and self-aware enough to be able to articulate that question, would you hide me? But a lot of Jews, they say it's like an iceberg. Our consciousness is like an iceberg. Only the tip is above the water. 99% of it is under. A lot of people don't even know what is deeply driving them. And as Jews, as an ancient people, we have a lot of inherited baggage. And I look at people like Norman Finkelstein and this guy, Dave Smith in America. Dave Smith who's all over everything. And he's like, Ben Shapiro, he's more loyal to Israel. Throwing Israel and the Jewish people under the bus. Deep down, if you really dig deep, he's trying to say, I'm with you. I'm not with them. When the time comes, please I'm a good Jew. I'm not going to side with them. I'm with you. But it doesn't. There was actually Jews in pre-Holocaust Germany that were called Jews for Hitler.
Yeah.
Okay. They still made their way into Auschwitz.
Yeah. It's called feeding the alligator, hoping that the alligator will eat you last.
Right. And so they're just selling their own people out in hopes that they will be spared.
So in a normal world, what should the Jewish response to this murder have been? What would we hope to see?
Are you talking about the murder in the embassy?
Yeah. You've got 2 Jews murdered in the streets, shot down in the streets for being Jews.
In the name of Free Palestine, yeah.
In the name of Free Palestine. What should the Jewish reaction be? And are we going to see it?
There's two answers to that. Number one is it's not our call because that's the United States of America and it's up to them to cast their own lot. If you're asking me if that were to happen in Israel, what should the response be to, let's say, Tze'ela Gez, who was just murdered this past week? This couple was about to get engaged. Their whole life ahead of them, getting married. Tze'ela Gez, 9 months pregnant, on the way to the hospital to deliver a baby to bring life into the world. Met by darkness and murder and genocidal hatred. What should our response here be to Tze'ela Gez? That's a question I can answer. But what should the response be in America? Yeah. America needs to cast their own lot. If I was a Jewish leader in America, I would be speaking up and saying it is time to return home. come back to the land of Israel.
1000%.
That would be my message before that also. But the more things are amplifying, the more Americans from both the right and the left are turning against the Jewish people. Jews need to open their eyes. We need to look in the Bible and say, when Laban started looking differently at Jacob, Jacob said, it's time to go. When you see that old compatriots, the right-wing conservatives in America that were always pro-Israel are now sharply turning against Israel in droves, and it's coming from the right and the left. It's time to say our neighbors are looking at us differently. Maybe God is bringing us home. Let's return home.
Great news, guys. Israel Summit live stream tickets are available June 9th through 11th. Even if you cannot make it in person, for just a few dollars, you can get live access to all of the inspiring speakers, including Ambassador David Friedman, Michelle Bachmann, Eric Stackelbeck, Yishai Fleischer, Jeremy and Ari, obviously a concert by the Israeli hit duo Yonina, and much, much more. No matter where you are in the world, if you can't make it to Texas, you can be equipped and inspired to fight and stand on behalf of Israel and Israel's biblical heartland. Just visit the link in the description below for all of the details. Remember, it's just $35 to get access for you and your entire family to a life-changing 3-day event from the comfort of your own home. Act fast. You don't want to wait. The summit is coming up very soon. You can get live stream access right now. Click the link in the description below to learn more.
Thinking of two things here, because you have you have people doing on opposite spheres what you just described. One, you have Daniela Weiss, who is now sanctioned by the UN or by the UK. For being a strong Jew in Judea and Samaria, supporting Jewish rights within Israel, hoping to achieve some Jewish rights in Gaza, and she's being sanctioned. She's the strong Jew that's saying, having a strong response, say, to terrorism here. She's the one trumpeting all of this. On the other side, you have the Yair Golan and the former IDF Major General, and you have Ehud Olmert, the former Prime Minister of Israel, who are really the voices like you just described. Even during the Holocaust, you had Jews that were trying to, I don't know, it's hard for me to describe.
I just want to say what Yair Golan said in case people don't know. He said,
can you just describe who Yair Golan was too?
He's the head of a party in Israel, a political party called the Democrats, which, by the way, we could really dig into on how revealing that is how he fundamentally describes himself, for hypocritical reasons. Like, there's not a lot of democracy actually there, but he was the former IDF deputy chief of staff. Anyways, he said this. He said, a sane country does not fight against civilians, does not kill babies as a hobby, and does not give itself the aim of expelling populations. Right? He argued that Israel's current military actions risk turning the country into a pariah state. We've had this issue since biblical times, okay? Right. But this idea where we send a delegate to the United Nations to represent Israel to the United Nations, but ultimately what do they end up doing? Representing the United Nations to Israel.
Right.
Coming to Israel and saying, well, the reason we've been condemned by them is this, and they end up representing them because they don't have moral clarity, Jewish character and conviction and faith and trust. And if you don't have faith and trust in the creator of the world living in Israel that faces the most overwhelming injustice and hypocrisy in the eyes of the world, that Daniela Weiss, a 79-year-old grandmother, is sanctioned, where murderers, genocidal murderers, the Palestinian Authority, who names squares and schools after Dalal Mughrabi, who killed 38 people, 13 children, it constantly inciting to murder. What has Daniela Weiss done? When has she ever incited? No, but she's sanctioned. And the murderer of Tel Agez, no, not sanctioned.
So the Foreign Secretary of the UK, David Lammy, said, he said, this move, quote, demonstrates our determination to hold extremist settlers to account as Palestinian communities suffer violence and intimidation. And then, like you said, it goes on to say Weiss, 79, is the leader of a radical settler organization called Nachalah, or homeland.
Can I just say, Daniela Weiss is an awesome lady. She's a personal friend of ours. And maybe I'm already thrown under the bus now that I've said she's a personal friend of ours. No, she is. And she's amazing. She's a Jewish lady that believes in Jewish rights and she loves Jewish people. She's a grandmother. You know what? Can I just tell a personal story about her? You know what she told me? She visited here one time. She said, it's so beautiful here. She said, you know what I do every time I go to a new Jewish community? She's involved with every new Jewish community. You know what she told me?
What?
She says, she's a perfect grandmother. She says, I grab those children. She says something really funny. She's like, always tell the parents when it's Shabbat and you bring your families, make sure and bring 2 or 3 new white shirts for those children because I want to see those children clean. She's got this real thing about.
She doesn't like the stains.
She doesn't like the trash laying around. She's like, we're making these Jewish communities beautiful. Not only the community should be beautiful, but the family should be beautiful. What are they talking about? This is a grandmother who loves children, loves families, wants to see them looking beautiful and good.
I want to clarify
what is going
something.
on? Yeah.
But why did this happen to her just now? There's zero question that is because of the Louis Theroux BBC interview, which I was on. So when my wife Shana saw it, she's like, are we about to be sanctioned now too? Like, because they're going to be going through the documentary and all the settlers that Louis Theroux claimed he's coming with an open mind are now actually paying a real price to because of that interview on Louis Theroux, which is just absolutely infuriating. And so, the prophet Isaiah says, woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. That is the moral confusion of the world that we live in right now.
And I've always been amazed whenever the press and the media demonize someone, and I actually get to meet them, thank God, through interviews and whatnot. Like they said, Rabbi Yehuda, the most dangerous man in the Middle East. And then I met him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's the sweetest person I've ever met.
Yeah, same with Daniela Weiss.
And he's also a fluffy liberal. Yeah. I love him. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. You go up on the Temple Mount with him and he goes up to Japanese tourists and he's like, praise God with me, dance with me. He loves all of humanity. He loves Arabs that shot him 4 times in the chest. And he's the extremist.
Right. And they say you're the extremist. They print it because you built a farm.
Well, and that's just, I just want to clarify, like that's literally Daniela Weiss's crime is the fact that she wants to make beautiful Jewish communities. She wants to build homes.
On empty
She wants
land.
children to run around in Jewish communities with clean white shirts on Shabbat. Like
That's like her
crime.
Oh my gosh, how dare she? She should go to jail.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're sanctioned, all right, it would be for the same crime, right? For building a home in Judea, for planting palm trees and olive trees and a beautiful vineyard and putting in a beautiful ecological pool. Like that literally is the crime.
I actually
that the UK
am grateful.
Wants to.
There's a British journalist named Jonathan Sacerdote, and he wanted to interview me because although in my mind, he's a little bit of a fluffy liberal himself, he said what they did to you and undoubtedly was slice, dice, and dishonestly propagandize what you said and so he interviewed me for a good hour and a half. And he got to hear about even an extremist, because I am an extremist settler. I am. Just if you're going to talk about a relative term, I am an extremist. I don't think that that's a bad term. I think Mother Teresa was also an extremist, right? She was an extremist when it came to love and compassion.
Extremist has negative connotations.
Unfortunately, but it shouldn't.
Right.
Because everybody...
How about a zealous or a passionate settler? Someone that's passionate about God, passionate about your land.
What's wrong with being extremist?
Extremist makes you seem like you're radical crazy. And that's why the leftists use the terminology. They're trying to build a framework to make you look like you're crazy.
But that's the thing. I want that.
You want to look crazy.
I want to own that because you know what?
Right.
If you look at Hamas and the irrational, infuriating, vile hatred and genocide on the whole world is with them. Are they extremist? Yeah, totally. So maybe we need to have that facet of ourselves and be like, yeah, you know what? We have faith, we have conviction, and I'm willing to die 1,000 deaths for Israel and the Jewish people and for freedom and goodness and life and what is delicate and what is precious and what is good for the Tze'elah Gezes. If it makes me an extremist, that I'm willing to die and sacrifice my life for what is good, then I'll own it.
But what if you represent the majority of Jews today? So then you're not so extreme anymore.
Then I'm not extreme anymore.
Right.
Or what if you actually do represent good? So someone else disagrees with you, And they may be even in the majority, but they represent and they adhere to evil.
In the end of the day,
So
you
it's
look at
better to be an
Christians in America, even Jews in America, they're going to their synagogues and their churches, and even the Orthodox synagogues, most of them, many of them, they're getting a lot of fluffy, liberal, toned down, explanations that is not inspiring. And then they're looking at Islam. And they're like, justice, our land, liberation. And they're going there. They're putting on the keffiyehs because people want something to believe in.
As a
or
writer,
Catholicism.
As a writer,
Or
I'm very...
Mormon,
right, that's why they're shifting
they're looking for religions with structure and rules and with vision, honestly. And a lot of Christianity doesn't have that. Sorry.
As a writer, I'm very, very sensitive to the language. And I beg of people when they read the news, to really understand what they're reading. So, I mean, you're being accused of being an extremist settler. How dare you? It's like I still remember the first time someone called me a mitnachel, which is the Hebrew term for. There's a couple terms for settlers, but mitnachel is the one that's popular, and it literally means someone who inherits. How dare I take my inheritance from my forefathers?
There you.
But it's come to mean something else in modern Hebrew.
Right.
And a lot of these terms, they're just being misused, and then they apply the wrong terms. So I think it's very important for people to understand what they're saying. It's not the West Bank. It's certainly not occupied territory. It's Yehuda and Shomron. It's Judea and Samaria. It's not a refugee camp. It's a city.
Right.
And don't tell me that the people are refugees. They've lived there for
three generations plus now.
Grandfather, his son, his grandson.
I think what's fascinating about this conversation is that there's 2 billion plus people on the planet that say they believe in the Bible, right?
Right.
Something like this. I'm right now reading through the book of Joshua. And so these 2 billion plus people in the world that would tell you, swear by, I believe in the Bible. Specifically, there's different Bible, Jewish Bible, Christian Bible, different things. But specifically the book of Joshua, they all agree. They believe that happened. Everyone who doesn't believe that the book of Joshua was part of the Bible, these 2 billion people would agree with that. As I'm reading through it, I'm like, in one sense, I'm seeing Israel today. I'm seeing the modern return of the Jewish people, as was prophesied by the prophets after Joshua, that spoke that this time would come again when the Jewish people would come back to the land. They would live again in their land. It was a beautiful thing. They would plant vineyards. They would restore the land. The agricultural cycles would be restored to the land of Israel. The ancient ruins would be rebuilt. The people would return home. This would be their home. That's what happened under Joshua, and the prophesied second Exodus, as it's spoken about in the Bible, is literally happening before us. But yet now the people who say they believe in the Bible are rejecting the very premise on which the Bible story was told to happen. The Jews are coming back to this land just like Joshua of old came back to the land. That was the story that was to happen again. So now that they're doing it, and really this war on Gaza is not exactly the way Joshua would have done it, there's similarities. The Jewish people are coming back. Prime Minister Netanyahu just made a statement this week that he said, not quite a Joshua statement, but he said, we will manage all of Gaza. He said, we will have security control of all of Gaza. And that was like a big step for him. I feel like we're moving in the right direction, but we're missing 2 billion people in the process, 2 billion people that say they agree with the idea of the Bible, the Jewish people, but yet somehow they're not on board when the actual biblical process is rolling out.
Is it possible for a person to believe in the Bible and also be against Israel today?
That's a deep question.
Well, I'll tell you, a lot of people...
box of worms there.
You're starting to sound a lot like Tommy Wallen.
God bless him.
The fact is, I don't think it's fair for people to say, well, I'm not a Bible believer, so you can't expect me to stand with Israel, and somehow conflate the reason to stand with Israel being because of the Bible. There's also a very basic, internally wired moral compass that we were created with in the depths of our soul when we came into the world. And when you see a genocidal people slicing the breasts off of women and putting babies in ovens and celebrating it with elation and joy. And then you see a nation going to almost suicidal lengths to do everything we can not to kill innocent civilians, which is a big question mark, being that at least 70% of the mutilation and rape and murder that happened in Gaza was from their innocent civilians that weren't in Hamas uniforms at all. You don't need to be a biblical believer to see a basic truth, to just see what is right and wrong. So I think that the call is beyond that. But on a Christian level, that's really the question for you guys.
What's surprising here is the Talmud talks a couple of things. If you do something evil, you should actually go somewhere far away and wear black so no one will recognize you, and then do it and get it out of your system. But no, what's crazy is no one's hiding their cards here. If you look at the symbol of Hamas, it's the Dome of the Rock with swords. Their charter. They say explicitly what they want to do.
And look at what their supporters are doing worldwide. We just saw that last night.
So it's like, are there any surprises here?
Yeah.
In Israel, like you look at our flag, you don't see any swords on it. It's
peace.
Maybe there should be. Maybe there should be.
Joshua would have had swords on his flag.
Yeah, what did Shimon and Levi have on their flag, right? It was a picture of the city of Shechem. Like the Israeli army should not be called the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces. If anything, just call it the Israeli army. It's an army. No. We're only on the defense. Only if you come and murder enough of us and our soil of Judea is drenched in enough blood of our children, then we will defend ourselves. No, maybe it should not be the IDF.
And yet when after October 7th, the big talking point was, oh, you have to see it in context. And I'm like, I am. I am seeing it in context, a 2,000-year context, and certainly in the last 100 years. It's just amazing. I don't understand how people can convince themselves that Hamas, who's being very open and blatant about their agenda, about their intentions, Hezbollah being very open and blatant. And yet, how can a person choose, like you brought the verse from Isaiah, how can a person look at black and say white? How can a person look at Hamas? The Pope, when he first met Mahmoud Abbas, he gave him a medallion and said, "You are an angel of peace." To look at Mahmoud Abbas and see him as an angel of peace, I mean, what kind
the
of...
last Pope.
Yeah.
He also donated his Pope mobile to the people of Gaza.
Right, and I'm just
after he passed away, which is
it's not a golf cart; it's a series 4x4.
I'm just waiting for the videos of Hamas riding around in it, shooting civilians from it.
So, but how can they do that? How can they convince themselves that it's
he literally pays in perpetuity people that killed
hundreds of millions of dollars.
The Fogel children, babies, killed babies. They're millionaires now, with American tax dollars paid through the Palestinian Authority.
The murder that happened last week, that Seilat Gaz, those murders will receive
for the rest of their lives, they'll receive. And this isn't like a secret undercover conspiracy. This is actually like their official policy where they have receipts issued, and
to the extent that they will withhold salaries from their employees, from government employees, if they're running short on cash, just so they can pay the terrorists.
Thank God one of the murders will not be receiving
Let me put this.
But his family will.
His family will. That's right.
Let me put this into personal context. It took me a very long time to find my wife. I got married. I was 39 years old. She was, thank God, pregnant within the first year. She was 7 months pregnant. She was going for her ultrasound. She was standing at the bus stop at Tzoma de Gush, and an Arab came out with a knife and jumped on her and stabbed her in the back. And the knife broke into 3 pieces. And she fell down. He pulled out another knife and kept stabbing her in the back, and the knife didn't go in. And that guy sat in jail for like 2 years. And he was getting money. How do I feel about that? You don't want to know. I'd rather not say it here. I like you guys. But that's what it looks like to personally.
Well, first off, you had an incredible miracle there.
Oh my gosh. My Rav said, there's some people, all of us walk around wondering, does God really like me? Does he really want me in the world? My wife and daughter, no question.
You're right. Oh my goodness, what a crazy story. But the fact is that he's roaming the streets again.
Of course. You kidding? Are you kidding? A couple of years he was out.
Because
how do you restrain yourself from finding him and slaying him? Am I going to get you guys banned?
Definitely, yeah.
Because that's not what it's about. That's not what it's about. And he was the guy who held the knife, but he's not the one who provided the knife. He's not the one who started the fire.
If he expressed remorse and a different, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But the recidivism rate of these terrorists, I mean, Sinwar had his brain tumor operated on by the Israeli taxpayer in Israeli prison.
He was also released.
And then he was released in a prisoner exchange. And then he did October 7th.
So Rav, if I can ask you a question, I mean, we're not the turn the other cheek religion. So what's a proper Jewish response?
The proper Jewish response.
I mean, on a theoretical level, we're not calling for any action or anything like that. On a theoretical level, what should we be doing? And you pointed out a lot of this started in Israel and then spread out to the world. Out of Zion will go teaching. Sometimes it's a bad lesson. It started in Israel with a stupid left wing that said, "Oh, we'll live with the Arabs. We'll give them," and I mean, we gave them Gaza. So what should be, on a theoretical level, a Torah response to what's happening?
Well, I know what the response right now has been is to build. Just build.
God bless you.
Like that's what the response has been.
God bless you. Planting trees. God bless you.
That's what people
But
are
that
doing.
should be like the bare minimum.
Yeah, you're saying
right?
they
established a new
I think
community.
you're asking what should happen to
Yes.
a terrorist.
You're saying
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you're asking what should happen
to
to a
me,
terrorist.
the terrorist, like what he did to your wife, should be put to death. No question, he should be executed. It doesn't matter that he wasn't successful in what he was doing. He was stabbing a pregnant woman in the back. Execute him, okay? And then his whole family is exiled to Gaza, to Syria, out. His whole family out, okay? And
No, you're
that's
not saying putting him in
At
Gaza.
the very what?
You didn't say put him in Gaza.
The guy that did it?
Yeah.
No, he should be executed.
You said Gaza. His family should go to Gaza. No, his family, because Gaza is going to be a part of Israel.
Well, I mean, okay, fine.
Yeah, right.
Gaza right now,
Right.
Gaza right
Okay.
now would be one of the places to potentially exile, or to Syria, out. The whole, if they're not willing to live in
Well,
the
let's
land
just think about this. What's going to happen to this guy who committed this terrible attack in D.C.?
Like,
Right.
the guy in D.C.
No, D.C.
Yeah.
Right.
You better
the police
believe
are still looking for a motive.
No,
Best case
in a
scenario,
normal
though,
world
he'll
in
get life
America,
in prison though.
the best case, best case
Yeah.
scenario.
No, he's
he
not
would
gonna
get
get
life
more than
imprisonment. Worst case scenario, it's exactly what you just outlined would exactly happen to him.
No. I'm saying he won't. He won't get more than life in prison, even in America today.
No, it depends what
could.
state you're in.
Yeah,
No?
but I think it would be very rare for him to get capital
this
punishment. Yeah.
This is funny. I mean, Donald Trump. It's hard. I was in New York City when he was 40 years ago, when he was just a real estate guy,
magnate,
and
yeah.
he was best friends with Muhammad Ali. So a lot of the lies about him, I'm like, no, that's a lie. And some of the things that people try to praise him for, I'm like, no. I know who this guy is. But what is he literally doing? He is literally taking criminals who don't belong in the country and say, no, they can't be here. And unfortunately, the American Jews have come up with this phrase that is not a Jewish phrase, tikkun olam, fixing the world. And they ascribe all these horrible things to tikkun olam and try to make it Jewish. So they say, oh, no, you can't deport them. You have to deport them. So Donald Trump is actually doing something very godly, very biblical. He's getting rid of them. I'm all for that. That's what they should do.
So-
This guy, he murdered 2 Jews in the streets. We can't have that in America. Bye to you. Bye to your family. Oh, you're calling for free Palestine? It's been nice. Bye.
So on this topic, before we move on to something else, there's something I want to read from Hillel Fold, who is also somebody we all know, and his brother was murdered brutally a number of years ago in Gush Etzion, just around the corner from where your wife was in a terrorist attack as well. He wrote this on Twitter, on X, in response to the DC murder. So let me just read part of this, and then I want to hear you guys' response to this. He said, "This psychopath who murdered the 2 staff members of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. tonight will rot in jail, hopefully for life, but he's not the only one guilty here. There were other murderers. Candace Owens, Piers Morgan, every single person who held Hamas and Hezbollah flags in the streets, every person who supported them, every person calling to globalize the Intifada, every single human being who contributed to Jew hatred online by spreading Hamas propaganda and blood libels. You are all guilty and you have blood on your hands. Interesting perspective. I'm curious to hear you guys' thoughts on this.
Well, number one, I had a certain aversion when he said psychopath.
Right.
Okay. I mean, a psychopath is also a relative term, one could say.
Would you say people that commit acts of terror like this know exactly what they're doing? Is that kind of what you're saying?
I mean, I think what he's saying is that if you could go back in time and kill baby Hitler, would you do so? Right? Knowing what Hitler did. Well, if the entire Western media is painting Israel as baby Hitler, then that level and degree of incitement that we see on mainstream media today from, again, like people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. And by the way, I'm for freedom of speech. I think I would just like to see a real debate with a real Jew with a real perspective and not some, American rabbi or whatever, but like someone here in the land, take them on. But there is an argument to make that there is a degree of incitement there by mainstream media that results in this type of thing.
Well, I think the issue, and I had the same.
By the way, too, if any of these guys are listening, this is a challenge for Ari Abramowitz to debate on your show.
Take a debate, yeah. No, but I had the same aversion to that psychopath thing because I believe in the States, as we spoke about earlier, in the States, it's always made to, that was just a crazy person. And that wasn't a real deal. That was just a insane, that person should have been in an insane asylum somewhere. And sorry.
You're saying it's far more common than, like, you're saying this is not a one-off person.
Most likely was not a psychopath.
Right. Yeah.
He was a very intelligent person probably that just bought the lie and thought that he was, just like Hitler, was made, he himself believed he was doing the world a favor. That was obvious with all of his deep-seated belief was he could change the world by his very horrific, mindset. But he ultimately believed in what he was doing. This person has been taught, just like the Palestinians, so-called, or Arabs around us, have been taught to believe the best thing they can do with their life is to take out the Jewish population.
Yeah.
And he believes that.
I was just on the way here talking to my good friend Michael Gale, and he said that, he's from Denver, not Denver, from Colorado, and there was an AOC Bernie Sanders event, and he went there with an Israeli flag. And the vile curses and spitting at him and the hatred that he received, he had to be surrounded by policemen just for picking up an Israeli flag.
Right.
Like, that's the degree of real vicious, murderous hatred for Israel in America and around the world right now.
You touched on something very important. Jews have a tendency to emphasize acts, emphasize deeds, mitzvahs, and Christians emphasize faith. And I think we have to learn from that because there is a huge power to belief, what you believe in. There's a huge power in prayer, in what you say. Prayer is saying, my belief is leading me to say something, and my speech will actually make a huge difference in the world. I'm standing on a mountaintop in the hills of Judea, and I'm saying words, and you know what? The world will be a better place. God is listening.
I think each side actually stands to learn from each other because faith, if it doesn't result in beliefs, it's not really faith.
Okay,
it's just professing words. But actions without the actual belief behind them, it's empty ritual that doesn't mean anything. But
here, what we saw in Washington, we saw the results of words. This guy was listening to Free Palestine night and day, and he's like, yeah, that's right. Let me act on those words of Free Palestine. I'm going to go out and kill a couple Jews. That's the result of those words. And when people start changing the meaning of words, that's a problem. That's a problem. I remember Linda Sarsour, she got caught calling for intifada. And people are like, she's like, yes, a cultural intifada. And I'm sorry, I lived in Israel for 2 intifadas. There was nothing cultural about it, okay? People have to understand that, yeah, they're saying stupid things, but those stupid things have a really bad impact. Those stupid things led to murder. It used to be that incitement was, go kill that person. I think what we're seeing right now is that incitement is actually much broader than that. Free Palestine, globalize the intifada from the river to the sea. Don't tell me context. That's a call to murder. That's called a genocide.
Yeah, I can't help but just, I have this very cherished belief that is growing in my heart more and more the more I think about it, and I hope it's not too abstract, but that we're all fractals. What is a fractal? It is a piece of something that within that thing, it contains all of it. It contains everything, every piece of it. So if we're all descended from Adam and Eve, right? Within Adam, there was Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, but also Esau and Ishmael and Amalek, and we all have all of that within us. So when we see a blemish in someone that may be tormenting us or persecuting us, we could hate them for it and say they should change. Or we could say, well, there's a reason that God is presenting them in my life right now. Maybe I have some sort of piece of that within me. And so we're seeing that they're abusing language and twisting truth. What does that mean? Should we be like, no, you have to tell the truth? Or do we need to tell the truth? Do we need to look inside and say, are we shining a light? Are we acting with courage and conviction and speaking the truth? Which is why I've been told by even people on my team that it's a losing battle, that not using the word Palestine, but it's so important to me because the entire concept of Palestine was created in order to negate our very existence, to say that we don't belong here. There never was an Arab country of Palestine. There was never a currency. There was never a prime minister. It was, it was a British colony and Ottoman Empire. What is that? Why are we using the word? Every time we say the word, we're giving credence to a lie. So people on my side, when I say, so why do you say it? Because if you're going to be accepted in the global dialogue, then you need to use this word. That battle has been lost.
Or to make sure people understand what you're talking about.
You have to be delegitimized from before you even say a word. You're already taking on
because
their
you're not
lingo.
using the jargon. You're not saying West Bank. You're not saying West Bank.
Bank's the same thing.
You guys came out with a great shirt. It says West Bank. It has a line through it, Judea and Samaria. Why is it called West Bank? Why am I called a settler? Because it's much easier to say get the settlers out of the West Bank than get the Jews out of Judea. Yeah. Right? We need to be, even if it means we're saying the words of truth and the whole world is on the other side being like, that guy's crazy. He's outside the Overton window. Fine. I'm outside the Overton window, but I'm outside the Overton window with God. Because God is a God of truth and his seal is truth. So I'll speak truth even if it means y'all think I'm nuts.
Isn't that part of being Jewish, being on the other side?
That's what Abraham was. He was in Hebrew, in Ivri, which means the other side. Everyone was worshiping stones and rocks and idols. And he said, no, there's the one God of Israel, one God of the whole world. And they said, you're crazy, Abraham. Fine, I'm crazy. Okay, and look what he did to change the world.
I think what you're saying is really important, though, that a lot of times it's easy to focus on the millions and tens of millions of people that are paying attention to people like Tucker Carlson, Dave Smith, Candace Owens. But instead, we just need to do a better job ourselves at spreading the truth and the light. Obviously, sometimes it feels like an uphill battle. Sometimes it feels like a losing battle because we all know that lies, a lie can go all the way around the world while the truth still putting its shoes on.
That's good.
But it's just
Mark Twain, right?
Probably, yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
But it's also easier. It's much easier to say, "Oh, you got to change," than actually say, "Wait a second."
I want to point out something that happened this week that I think is very significant and actually, I think very encouraging. Yuval Raphael, she came in second place in the Eurovision. And
she was a survivor.
She was a survivor. She hid under dead bodies on October 7th.
Right. Yeah.
Which was not mentioned. It was not mentioned. She had, God bless her. She wore a dress that the previous winner or contestant in the Eurovision wore a dress that was clearly based on the ribbon for the hostages.
Oh, yeah.
There were a lot of hidden things in there. She at one point lifted up her dress, and it was the symbol of Batman, and that was for the Bebas children. But the amazing thing about her was, according to the judges, she was in 51st place. The judges slammed her, and it was clearly biased and clearly unfair. Her performance, stunning.
It's an amazing voice. Yeah.
Yeah, stunning. And I'm going to get it. And the heart that she put behind it just came out so powerfully. But part of the Eurovision is the votes from around the world, and it pushed her up to second place.
The public vote, yeah.
So unfortunately, the darkness is very loud and very extreme. But I think that the average person knows the truth. They know when they're being lied to. They know when they're being used and abused. And they know, I mean, they look at Hamas and they're not being fooled. They're not fooling anyone.
Well, why did she win second place in the global? Because when people saw her, there's a saying in Torah Judaism, "Davar sheyotze min halev nichnas lalev." That which comes from the heart goes into the heart. She laid for 8 hours under the murdered bodies of her friends that were in this shelter. For 8 hours, she played dead, as her father told her to do over the phone, and she survived that. And from the depths of her heart, on behalf of all of them and all of Israel, she unleashed such a light, and that resonates with people. And I think we need to learn that as a nation. We need to stop strategizing and saying, what's the best approach, and how do we paint them into this, and how do we pragmatic? No, just speak from our hearts the truth and light, and the whole world is waiting for it. They're waiting for it.
That's right.
I remember when I was 17 years old, gosh, I'm getting old. When I was 17 years old, I came to Israel for Old Pot. It was in 1978. And me and some friends went to Eilat for the weekend. And we're sleeping on the beach in Eilat. And in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m, all of the hotels emptied out. And people came onto the beach singing and playing. I remember there was one guy with a trumpet, and it was just like, it was crazy. And they were singing and they were ecstatic. Israel had just won the Eurovision. And what was the song they won with in 1978? Hallelujah la'olam, hallelujah to the world. And I cry about it when I think about it now, because this is what we gave to the world. We gave the world a hallelujah. We gave the world Yuval Raphael. And the world, the people of the world wanted it. Israel's not another country, and this is not another war. Everyone knows that this is light against darkness. Everyone knows what Israel has to offer to the world and what could be lost, God forbid, if we lose. What will be lost? All of the hope for goodness, all of the hope for godness, all of the hope for a biblical prophecy, for a biblical promise that will never go away.
That's why Yair Golan, back to the beginning, committed political suicide by saying that, because he lost himself for a second. He's so lost and flipping through YouTube shorts of the entire world saying these things, and now he gets to be the token Jew that is loved and glorified and amplified and magnified by all of these nations for a moment, and he says these things, and now he gets to be that guy. But meanwhile, in the country, everyone's like, I don't care what the world says.
Right.
Our sons are dying. If we wanted to do what he was saying, there wouldn't be one dead Jewish soldier. We would just go from drones and just mow them all down. Why are soldiers dying? Because they're trying to work around the civilians. That's why they're doing it. And so the country knows, and they're saying, this is what he's saying, forget him. That's why he had to roll it back and say, no, I was talking about the political echelons and the leadership, but the soldiers themselves are acting with a high level of ethics. He's like rolling it back because he realized that his entire people had heard that and like, we know what's going on. We're here. We know the truth. And you just sold us out. Yair Golan.
So when I write articles, I try to use prophecy as much as I can. And the thing about prophecy is, you know what's going to happen. And you usually know how it's going to happen. The question is when. And the problem is when it happens, you don't always recognize it. But when it comes to prophecy, it's not a question of what's going to happen. We know Israel's going to be okay. We know Hashem is right over us like a mother bird, protecting its babies. There's nothing going to happen to Israel. We'll suffer, but we're here forever. We're never going to leave the land again, which is what they believe. The only question you have to ask about prophecy is, where were you? Where did you stand?
Yeah,
that's right.
I think that's important.
And there's a wave of God going around the world right now. There's a wave of God.
Very important.
And everyone's polarized. And the thing that's amazing about social media is, you know, the Messiah is going to come and he's going to be like, okay, where were you? And they'll be like, oh, I was totally for Israel. I was totally for the Bible. Oh, really? But
Really?
what about all these Facebook posts?
Yeah.
What about your Twitter feed? You know, there's no hiding.
Yeah.
That's
There's
why
no hiding.
Mordechai said to Esther, salvation, revach v'atzala yavo leyudim. Their salvation will come to the nation of Israel. Will be from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Will be through you. That's why I love you guys so much, because you have stood up and said, God, hineni. Let it be through me. I'm not here to work the vineyards of Israel. No, I'm here to do what you are sending me to do at any given moment, to stand with your people. Hineni. And so you are the vessel and the vehicle for that prophecy to manifest.
We want to be a conduit for as many people from the nations as possible to come, and like you're saying, and actually have the opportunity to stand up for God and his people.
Yeah,
and his
but you guys
land.
picked Har Bracha, okay?
I think it's a call. I think there is a call to the nations. The nations have not yet fully understood, and that's kind of what we're talking about now. Like you said, I believe wholeheartedly what you said. God's watching over Israel. And it's now the nation's opportunity. Do they want to be a part of this story, this eternal story, this story that is not going to end in disaster, the story that ends in redemption? Yeah. And the nations now have an opportunity to be a part of that, even when it looks like, and it's almost a facade. I really feel like that. We pointed that out in the show. There really is a facade out there. The Eurovision facade that made it look like Israel was facade. That was 58, but really was almost top.
I mentioned what I thought was encouraging about that too, is that, you're talking about a little bit of light, blocks out, eliminates the darkness, right? Because it seems like hundreds of millions of views on social media are all this anti-Israel stuff, and Tucker Carlson and Dave Smith and Candace Owens and stuff. But when it comes down to the public vote for the Israeli singer Eurovision, she won by like a landslide, right? And the judges put her at 51. The public put her at second place. So it's encouraging to know that even though maybe we don't always see the voices, we don't always realize that the millions of people are there, every once in a while you say, oh, Israel, there are millions of people that do have Israel's back.
And that's with a lot of different things. We see that in the public sphere in many, when it comes to conservative values, of course, it's the majority of the planet, I believe. And we do not always see that represented in the polls. The polls are biased. The polls are media. And the media obviously has, as we've seen here with First Eyes, Israel's like the fishbowl of media, where you can watch and just see how they're just manipulating and creating this content that they want to create, that they know that will sell every day of the week. And so there's a lot of manipulation going on.
Will it?
And a future day, maybe not.
At some point, that like when it comes, and maybe it's the same thing when it comes down to the action, when it comes down to reality.
I think, there's a lot, unfortunately, the darkness does wield a lot of power. I'm stunned at the internet, the algorithms, and how I've been treated online.
Your entire Facebook account.
My Facebook,
gone, right?
My Facebook account is gone. And it was like they erased the private messages,
his private messages, like
which
Facebook
are encrypted,
Messenger.
and they, according to them, we can't even read it. And it was erased with a sign saying it violated community guidelines. I'm like, how would you know?
Not Facebook posts, private messages.
Private messages,
everything.
Which scares me because Facebook also owns WhatsApp.
Do you have WhatsApp?
Yeah.
It still works.
But that's personal messaging. That's personal messaging.
I know people that had their WhatsApp taken away too.
Yeah, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
And deleted.
Yeah.
For violating community guidelines?
I would assume so. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's crazy because Zuckerberg said that they changed their policies, and I'm like, no, you didn't.
We haven't noticed.
But now the entire left-wing media, now they're coming out saying, oh, we knew that Biden had dementia. And I'm like, Jake Tapper, he came out with a book. And his book is like, oh yeah. Meanwhile, they have a video of him telling someone, "How dare you say that he's not doesn't have mental acuity?"
We saw that during Corona. They took down things that are now on the White House website.
Exactly.
That's, there's an old meme I remember of Zuckerberg. He's sitting with some kid at some school on the computer, and the kid said, "My dad told me you're spying on us," and he responded, "He's not your real dad."
I think I've seen that.
We have to be aware. I sort of sometimes I just come to peace with the concept of losing all of my technological everything. My email, my WhatsApp, I need to be prepared for that, because in the times we're going into, that could happen like that. And so we really need to be prepared for that, because
You were talking about how you refuse, despite all the pushback and the harsh treatment you get, you refuse to give in to the false narrative. There's a concept of not going down quietly. Meaning, yes, the odds are stacked. Yes, they're using unfair methodologies. They're using they're manipulating. They're doing horrible things. Okay. But I will not go down quietly. I refuse to acknowledge, to give into their game. I refuse. Of course, they're going to censor me, but what am I going to do? I'm going to say, yeah, Israel's really the aggressor. And what am I going to do? I cannot go.
I was born in Texas, 4th generation Texan, only because of the destruction of the temple and the exile of the Jewish people around the world, but I was born in Texas. I have sparks of light from Texas, the Alamo. The Alamo is a part of me, right? That was a final showdown. From my balcony, you could see Masada, where a Jew said, I would rather die than to be subjugated to the sick, twisted Roman Empire.
Right.
That is a part of us as a people. We need to reclaim. That's already, we don't even need to reclaim it.
It's there.
We just need to fan that spark that is alive within us.
And they don't understand. I mean, what are they thinking? It's like, okay, for 2,000 years, we prayed 3 times a day towards Jerusalem. For 2,000 years, we were always yearning to come back to Israel. For 2,000 years, we read the Bible about God will bring us back. What do they think? We're going to give up tomorrow?
Yeah.
What do they think? We're going to give them Jerusalem? What do they think?
The prophet Isaiah says, no weapon that is formed against you shall succeed. Right. And every tongue that rises against you in judgment, you shall condemn.
As we mentioned, most Christians will quote that verse, saying that it's like a spiritual application to, anybody anywhere in the world that claims to be a Christian. Like nobody, hardly anyone connotates that to God watching over his people Israel.
It just means they're not watching. They don't have their eyes open. They don't want to see. They have eyes, but they don't want to use them to see the truth because they don't want to come to terms with the consequences that truth may have for their lives and the way they're living and the way they're believing. And they're virtue signaling with all their friends. They so badly want to be accepted, but they don't see the hundreds of intercontinental ballistic missiles aimed at Israel and the statistical.
We got a pile of metal sitting right here.
The statistical possibility that it would happen, that hundreds of them would be shot in, and that none of them would kill any one Jew. The one that did killed a terrorist from Gaza because half of it fell on his head as he was walking through Jericho.
Yeah.
But the overwhelm, even when it does get through, because God wants to show, don't think your technology is doing this. Right. It's going to come through right to your airport, but I'm going to move it over here. Just know it's from me. I'm protecting you through the Iron Dome. I'm protecting you. I've brought you this technology. Don't think it's the power of your own hands. It's not you. It's me. We're in this together. That's God's message to us. Have faith in me. That's what it's about.
I spent way too many years in yeshiva. And in yeshiva, you learn an awful lot of Talmud. And they specifically learn the things that are not relevant to anything. Okay. So you learn all this really crazy esoteric things about, if a chicken gives birth on the holiday, what do you do with the egg? That kind of stuff. Or if 2 guys grab hold of a piece of cloth or a shirt, what do you do with it? All that kind of stuff. I love when Christians quote prophecy at me. You guys, God bless you. You learn prophecy. No one in yeshiva learns prophecy like you guys. And I was asking myself, why is that? And I think it's because for 2,000 years, a Jew is sitting there in a shtetl, in the ghetto in Poland, and he's sitting there in the freezing cold with a candle, learning the Talmud to take his mind off the fact that there are Cossacks getting on their horses, getting ready to come over and wipe out the Jewish village. You know what? You can't learn prophecy if that's what you got. You can't learn about King David. You can't even learn about King Saul. You can't learn prophecy about we're going to come back if you're sitting in that ghetto in Poland. And now I'm sitting here with 2 Christians and a holy Yid in an army uniform. Where's your M16? Okay. I mean, yes, I can learn prophecy now because it's history. It's past. It's happened. It's happening, and that's the difference. We're not. I feel so bad about what happened in New York. If this was in Israel, there would have been 20 guys pulling out their 9mm.
The attack in DC.
The attack in DC. There would have been 20 guys on the street, and another 20 soldiers who had just gotten off the bus with M16s.
I'd like to believe that, but I mean, October 7th did put a certain dent in my faith in the military establishment. Not in the military, not in the soldiers, not in the lions of Israel wearing the IDF uniforms, but in the leftist brass that is running the country.
The Yair Golan and the Omerts.
The Yair Golans and the Herzia ladies.
The higher echelons that have...
People that should be at the very least.
One of the big failures, and I experienced this when I lived in Bahrain. I was on the quick response team, which was kind of, it was kind of a joke, but not really, because there were actual terrorist attacks and we had some very precious souls killed. But what happened on October 7th was all of the weapons for the quick response teams were locked up in the armory. And there were a few communities where the usually young, there was one young woman who was in charge of the security. She said, oh no, and she unlocked and gave it, and nothing happened there. So yes, the IDF, but what people don't understand about the security of Israel is, yes, the IDF, unbelievable, God bless them, okay? But what's the real security of Israel? You're not a soldier. You finished your duty.
I am a soldier.
No, you finished your duty.
I'm in reserves right now.
You're in reserves. Yeah. What's reserves? Reserves is, you got a family.
Reserves are the soldiers of Israel.
Reserves are the real soldiers of Israel. The entire defense of Israel is based on you. It's based on, we got an army, but they're only supposed to hold for, a couple hours, and then the reserves are going to kick in. And there are these communities that are separated, but they've got M16s. And if stuff goes down, you'll have the...
I think the philosophy is really displayed by the BBC interview. When you watch the propaganda element of the interview, it's also the camera. Every single Jew they meet, they zoom in every single time. They zoom in on his handgun, on his weapon, as if there's something inherently dirty about having a weapon.
That the Jews might fight back. God forbid.
That type of thinking has so infiltrated the brass that they're like, we don't need these archaic weapons. We have such wonderful technology. Lock up the weapons. You don't need them. There's something inherently bad about them.
But the IDF and the Israeli government, they glommed onto that and they said, oh, good idea. Right. It's wrong that the individuals should. And they lock. I remember when I was on Bahrain, they sent a soldier with long payas, because we all had long payas back then, to take our weapons and lock them up. And we're all like, dude, don't you feel like you're turning on us? They're on your own people. There used to be a directive that if you lived in one area, you would do your reserve duty in that area. And the guy who became the mayor of Haifa, he changed that. Why? Because he didn't want militias. He didn't want people to say, we are the army of Judea. We are the army of Benjamin. And you know what? We have to believe in the Jewish people again. We have to believe, and not the Jewish people in exile who, God forbid, they had weapons that they could defend themselves against the anti-Semites. You know what? Jews of Washington, D.C., go get yourself a permit.
Or move to Israel.
Or move to, that's a better one.
Right?
If you move to Israel, you got Rav Ari to protect you.
Gentlemen, we can go for another hour probably. We didn't even get into France putting out a statement with Canada and the UK firmly opposing the expansion of military operations in Gaza and threatening to take action to stop the war in Gaza, which I have no idea how France and the United Kingdom and Canada think they're going to stop the war in Gaza. But that's
virtue signaling to Qatar.
Yeah.
And they're putting on a conference.
We want some money. Yeah.
Why are you leaving us out? Why are you leaving us out for? Don't give it all to Trump.
Putting on a conference with the UN in June with the goal of stopping the war, establishing a Palestinian state. I would talk about facade. I feel like that's like the theme. Like it's all a facade. Like what in the world could these countries actually do? We were talking earlier about how it's literally the Western countries that care about the Palestinian Arabs. The Arab countries couldn't care less, right? It's just such a facade.
We care about the Palestinians far away.
Far away from us. Yeah, right. So it's all just such a facade. I was thinking, I don't even know why we think that this is like a weekly roundtable about the news of the week, because I feel like it just within 5 minutes turns into like we could call it a Geulah podcast, really. We just get together to talk about the redemption of God's kingdom and the land of Israel every single week. And I honestly, I think that's so much more important and has so much more value. So it's been amazing. Any last thoughts from anyone? I feel like we've just talked about prophecy in the Torah, and it's all such a positive, the news is so negative and there's so much darkness, but then when you find the light coming forth from Zion, I think that's what's encouraging.
Right. I think when you say a Geulah podcast, redemption, it's a redemption podcast. And what is the difference in my mind between the word salvation and redemption? Salvation is where you're like, God, we're surrounded by 23 Arab countries, 57 Muslim countries. They're coming against us. The Hezbollah and the Hamas help us, and God helps us and saves us. That's salvation. Redemption is where we're able to look back at all of the pain and the tears and the murder and the heartbreak and say, now I see why that was all necessary to bring us to the consciousness and the awareness that we have for the actual redemption, for that salvation. That is what it's for. And so it's important what we're doing here because it is giving context to what is unfolding in the world. It's not just looking at these atomized random events that are happening and dealing with that. There is a greater narrative, a greater picture that is being woven together. And we're here to try to use the word of God together to understand and to reveal where we're at, to give people that opportunity to stand where they should stand, to stand with God and not to stand with whatever the zeitgeist may be.
Yeah. If I can, I totally agree with you, which actually makes me sure that I'm right. But when I first started writing 10 years ago, about Geulah, about redemption and the signs that redemption is coming, and writing about the news from, the prophecy angle, people were like, oh, stop it. You're making something out of nothing. This has always happened. This is nothing new. You're making too big a deal out of it. Since COVID, no one's ever said that. Everyone in the world knows COVID went into every house in the world. Everyone in the world knew there was COVID out there. Everyone in the world knows that Israel's at war. There are a lot of wars going on, but everyone's focused on Israel. We are clearly living in times of Geulah and redemption. There's no question. And really the question is, where do you stand?
Right.
And I mean, I love the Jewish people. Every Jew is a star in heaven, but not for our benefit. We're here, as everyone's been saying, we're the canary in the coal mine. We're the litmus test. We're the way that you can show where do you stand. Mila Hashem Alai, whoever's for God, come to me, come to Ferrari, come to me, come to Hayovel, and then that will show where you are, that you are standing with Hashem.
I think if I was to sum up quickly, Luke, because we got to end with a clear action item here. Ooh. The action item is, if you're Jewish in the world and you're listening to this show, please come back to the land of Israel.
Amen.
That's part of the redemption process. And as a non-Jew, I'm looking forward to the day when Israel is the gathering place, just as the prophets foresaw it, where all the Jewish people of the world gathered together, not because they were running from something, because they wanted to be where God wanted the Jewish people to shed the light to the entire world. The Jewish people gathering in the mountains and the hills of Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and all the way to Tel Aviv and Haifa and all of these places is the most redemptive thing a Jewish person could possibly do at this moment in time, to come to be that light to the world. So if you're Jewish, jump on the moment. Be a part of the prophecy that is fulfilling itself right now
and
before our eyes. And if you're a Christian, this is what I want to say. You have a biblical obligation to stand with the Jewish people, as this is no doubt the second Exodus. We know from the Bible what happened with those who did not stand with the Jewish people. They were called the Ammonites and the Moabites. Yeah. Jewish people came across the Red Sea. These people, they said, not coming through here, no bread, no water. They refused to help and allow the Jewish people, assist the Jewish people in the Exodus to the promised land. God told them very clearly later on, you're not welcomed here. You're not welcomed in my house.
10th generation.
To 10 generations and forever.
Literally, their crime was withholding food and water.
And that's what I want to say to the nations, specifically to Christians that read the Bible, that know these stories, is that you have an obligation, and I believe, and I'll say it very bluntly, it's really a salvation. You talked about salvation. If the nations are going to be a part of this story, and they're not serving Israel, you said it earlier as well, there's a lot of question. And is God the same God that said that to the Ammonites and Moabites back then? I think he's going to say the same thing today. If there's Christians that are opposing and resisting and not supporting Israel and this modern return to the Jewish state as of today, God help you. And I don't know the grace of God that would assist that kind of person, but before, the story was very clear. God said, not in my house. You're not welcomed here. And what I want to say is leave us on a positive note is the nations have an opportunity. This is not just the Jewish ingathering, even though it is. This time, it's much bigger.
And if you want to come
the
and
nations,
if you want to be a part of this and really connect to these ideas, the Israel Summit.
yes,
Come to the Israel Summit.
You literally have 2.5 weeks, guys. You can come in person. You can get a live stream ticket. We'll put the link down below. I know we've been talking about it, but time is running out. Come to meet Ari. Come to hang out with so many people. We're all coming from Israel. Time is definitely running out to do that. Eliyahu Berkowitz, I realized it's been such an honor to have you with us today. Special guest, and I hope you get to come back. I know it's a long train and bus ride to get here.
It is so worth it.
I forgot to introduce you though. Like you have been writing about Geulah and the redemption for 10 years.
Yeah.
You've written more articles than anybody I know. Probably
5,000.
most people in
articles.
Israel. Any journalists or writers like.
And 4 books.
So people should connect with you. Like,
And that's without ChatGPT.
Actually, the last
can
one.
people find you on Facebook?
Some of the editing was
Is your
ChatGPT.
Facebook account gone, or can people find you?
I have a new Facebook account.
Facebook account. Okay.
Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz. I have I'm trying to get together a Substack, and I have a YouTube channel, which I want to get more active on, called Wrestling the Angel.
And Eliyahu's work has been read by literally millions, probably tens of millions of people over the last decade. So you should definitely connect with him. Honor to have you with us today. Guys, as always, make sure to connect with Ari and Jeremy. Jeremy, unfortunately, was not here this week. Should be back next week, God willing. TheLandOfIsrael.com, Land of Israel Fellowship. Make sure to connect with Ari and Jeremy. And come to the Israel Summit. Guys, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for being with us today. As always, stop listening to the lies and the propaganda. Come to Israel, connect with the truth of what's happening here in Israel. We'll be back next week here at the Israel Guys.
Amen.